self-control. Her gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Friday edition of the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here and being among you all. And a special thank you for the Freaky Friday crew. Awesome show, as always. Great to listen to you guys as I prep for my own show. And it's just, you guys are great. I just love to listen to you guys' dialogue and banter and really cool stuff. So I hope you guys are having a great Friday. It's the weekend. You've made it. You are now free to experience your weekend unhindered, unless, of course, you work on weekends, and nothing I can do about that, but I'm just trying to be optimistic. So it is our Friday night, but it's also a very special Friday night show here on the Paranormal Portal, and one of which that I'm really excited to bring to you. Joining us tonight on the portal is Mr. Jeffrey Seelman, who is a spiritual teacher, an author, an educator in spiritual issues, and he is an exorcist. And he's joining us tonight, so without further ado, let me welcome Jeffrey to the show. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Hi, Brent. Thank you for having me back on Paranormal Portal. It's great to be back, really.
Oh, it's great to have you. And of course, last time we were on, you know, we had a lot going on, but even with 2 hours, there was so much more to cover, so much more to do and say, and so having you back was just a no-brainer. I mean, that was the only option on the table, was to get you back and hear what else we could get from you.
Thanks. You know, there's so much happening in our world today, so much to talk about, you know, and you just can't cover it in 2 hours.
Yeah.
And we tried, but there's so much happening and so many topics to cover. And so it's good to be here to get deeper into these subjects.
Yeah, I agree, and thank you so much for agreeing to come back on. That, of course, is absolutely wonderful and exciting. But now, since you've been on the last time, has anything been going on in your world as far as the spirituality or energy work, or what are you feeling going on? Because you said it, it's absolutely right. I mean, the universe, or the world is so supercharged right now with a lot of energy. A lot of things seem to be in flux. And a lot of people are just feeling so supercharged and anxious. Are you seeing the same things? And what do you think about this whole trend that we're going through?
More and more every week. Certainly, I grew up in the 1960s and 70s, and that was a time of incredible in the United States. I think that things are actually worse now. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're handling it as well as we used to. There's so much information coming at us at once, and it's hard to look in any direction without getting some update as to some negative event that's happening in our world right now. And so, you know, back in the 60s and 70s, you know, we didn't even have VCRs, much less DVD players, and there was no cable and internet, and people did not have telephones in their pockets. If you weren't home, you weren't home. and I'm not against technology. I have more of it than most people do.
Sure.
but I love it. But it's got it. We're getting used to it, and it has its downside. And one of it is that people are being inundated by bad news.
Yeah.
Not good news. There's not enough good news going on out there. There's a lot of positive things happening as well, but we're not hearing about it. Once in a while, we get these fluff stories from the general media, but for the most part, it's what it's always been, which is pretty much the death toll. You know, it's. I remember back in the 1960s watching the late great Walter Cronkite every night, and they'd have a little thing in the corner. 53 American soldiers dead, 253 North Korean or Vietnamese or Viet Cong soldiers dead. And I would think, are we winning?
Yeah.
I mean, what's happening? I thought that, all the way through the 60s, and I was growing up in the early 70s until it ended. I think we handled it better because we weren't exposed to it, so much, that the evening news was half an hour long. As long as we felt in the 60s that half an hour was long enough. That was enough news. Let's go on to something else now, because we have our own lives and things to do. And I think that things are not that way right now. I mean, I used to work for an internet company, and when it first started, and, it's just so much coming at us as far as information that we don't have anywhere to turn. And so people are getting angrier and angrier. And this is where negative spirits strike.
Right.
This is where dead people who continue to do negative things, which is the majority of negative spirits. There's this concept out there, Brent, that most of the negative spirits are demonic spirits, and it's just not true. The real issue is people who are doing negative things in their life here on Earth, or whatever planet they happen to live on. Lots of planets out there are continuing to do negative things.
Yeah.
And this is where the problem lies, is that they're giving us that push. They're giving us that shove on an emotional level. And that's how they do it. We can't see spirits normally. Some people at different times see them as well as I do. I was born that way. But for the most part, we can't see them physically. But we can feel them emotionally if we discern enough.
Yeah.
But most of us, we naturally get into these situations where we are emotional. And that's when spirits strike. And what they do is they generate feelings. They generate anger and negative feelings on what might be called a telepathic. And so, telepathy is not some kind of, really weird out there philosophy. It's something we all do. It's nonverbal communication. So each of us has two parts of us. We have our physical being, what you see looking at me, and also our spirit, our soul, which is really who we are. So if you want to know what your soul looks like, just go look in the mirror, because your soul is you.
Okay.
And spirits that are negative are having a really good time right now, pushing people into doing things that they would not normally do. And so the real danger, here is with the average negative person who is dead and continuing to do negative things, not with the less common demonic spirit. And in that variety of spirit, there's all sorts of beings, some that I am familiar with and some that I am not. Okay. But I come across these things in my work. And it should be said that the number one problem facing our world today, I believe, my opinion, is ourselves.
Yes.
That we are causing most of the problems. Yes, things may be pushing at us and trying to drive us to do things that we would not normally do. But the real danger is how we feel about each other and how we are now reacting to each other. We're being angry with each other. So really, the biggest problem I'm running into right now are the hard feelings, in my work, are the hard feelings that people have for each other.
Right.
And that's causing difficulty in the workplace, at home, uh, everything, holiday dinners. And this is happening all around the world. I travel.
Sure.
And go to different countries as well. And this is not unique to the United States by any means, that we're going through a lot of changes. People are relocating, immigrating for some very good reasons. I'm not going to get into the immigration argument. That's not what it's about. What I'm trying to say is that there's a reason that this is happening, and a reason these people are doing that. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to live in a place where they cut off your hands for,
yeah,
or they won't let you drive. And I have many clients in Central and South America, that are living in a nightmare.
Oh man.
And so they're trying to escape from that. And so that's enough said on that. But so there's a lot of changes going on in our demographics as well. And we have to get used to that as time rolls by. These are things that are happening. And these are things that are happening in travel too. This is not just the United States. This is happening all over the world. Mm-hmm. Our world is kind of becoming smaller. It was always meant to. People are traveling more and more, which is really great. And so people are coming from different countries and taking a look at the United States, or going to Europe or Asia or South America or Australia, Canada,
right?
All these wonderful continents and countries. And so we're learning how to live with each other. And that's something that's not easy to do. And there's a lot of anger. And so we're generating these feelings. Mm-hmm. And feelings have an actual corresponding energy to them.
Sure.
They're not just invisible things that go away. So when we feel rage or anger or happiness, it actually is a real energy. Mm-hmm. And we can't see it. I can. Some people can. I can certainly feel it. And I do things about release emotional energy from people's energy fields, and also properties, homes and businesses, and have for 28 years. And so I've never really been busier. There's a lot of problems going on right now. And so no shortage of anger with people so close to each other. Mm-hmm. But it's all over the world.
Right. Now, that brings up an interesting point that, I think we all would agree that there are negative spirits that can influence us on a very individual level, and maybe even regionally in like a home or, in a small area. But is there, and this is something that I'm very serious about because I'm trying to understand the dynamics of the spirit. Is there a larger force that these things work in concert with? And I'm not getting stuck on devil, Satan, and anything like that, but these people, and it seems like there is an intent behind it, and it just seems so ugly and so nefarious. But could that possibly be an agenda of some larger being or force that is trying to skew, the population of the world? Is that possible, or is it more just us and creating a societal energy? You know what I mean, by our own actions, and so basically, is it the devil made me do it, or are we responsible?
It's a good question, Brent. I think part of it is revenge, and that is carried out by people who are now deceased, who are still angry. Things are not the way they wanted them to be on the other side. Mm-hmm. And so they're getting their revenge, and they're angry, and they want to spread that anger. In the larger spectrum, I would say the answer is no.
Okay.
I would like to tell you that it's yes. I would like to say that there's a big conspiracy to destroy the planet Earth and the people who live on it by some alien force or spirits, demonic spirits, whatever. No, they're just having fun.
Okay.
This is their idea of a good time. Mm. And this is what we need to really be concerned about here, is that destruction for the sake of destruction, just to say that they can do it, that I can manipulate that person into hurting their loved one, that I can manipulate that person into committing an act of violence. or harming themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Negative spirits and demonic are essentially criminals, and they think like criminals. Criminals sometimes organize, but it's not really common. Yes, we have, organized crime and all of that, but that's not the majority of criminals. The majority of criminals actually don't get along with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of negative spirits and demonic spirits do not get along with each other as well.
Oh.
They're unhappy, and unhappy people, unhappy spirits do not get along with each other. So I don't think, sometimes they act in concert. It's not an absolute.
Okay.
I think that there are, bands of spirits. I come across this certainly in my work, bands of negative spirits and demonic spirits that are attacking a family to break up the family, attacking an organization, attacking a business, attacking groups in order and destroy that group. Mm-hmm. They like to see unhappiness because they're unhappy. And so the idea of we're making it easy on them. And this is something we really need to look at as well. We are making it easy on negative spirits. We're doing their job for them by being angry with each other over normal differences. We're not all supposed to think alike anyway. And so this is very common for people to think differently, and we should accept that we think differently and talk about how to make a better world and not give in to hatred of each other. This is the danger that we start to fall into the trap of disliking our neighbor because country of origin or philosophies, be they conservative or liberal. That's something that's worldwide. The concept of being conservative or liberal. It's not a unique position here in the United States. Sure. And so this is normal. This has always been. But we've always seemed to manage to pretty much get along. We've had problems. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and we had problems. They had problems in the 50s and 40s and all that and back. But we got along with our neighbors. The idea is, get that barbecue going, get that block party going with your neighbors, and maybe just don't talk politics. That's what that was the answer when I was growing up, Brent. Yeah. Don't talk politics. Get together with your neighbors, play some basketball, baseball, get a barbecue going. We had so much fun, but leave the politics at home. Right. You're really not going to change people's minds by shouting and yelling at them. Right. The best way to do that is living by example. And so how this plays into spirits is that if we start being kind to ourselves, start being kind to each other, and at least accepting that we have differences and respecting each other for these differences, we're going to make these negative spirits less powerful. We're also going to make people who are living around us, who are perpetuating anger, less powerful. I think that's also something that's important to say. Wow. Yeah. That because I said before that the real problem, the number one problem, is living people who are being angry with each other and generating a huge amount of anger. I think we're all doing it to a certain extent. We're all very frustrated, and around the world, with things are really, I think we'll get out of it. I think we're a very clever race. I have a great faith in the human race. I don't believe in Armageddon. I think that we're going to come through this. Yeah, it's going to be a little while, but we're pretty unique individuals. We invented, I posted something on Facebook yesterday, which you can reach from my website, starclear.com, that we have a new airplane out. The Air Force released a new airplane. I was in the Air Force many years ago, and I thought, well, this is a really nice airplane. It's not a fighter. It's just a tanker and a refueling plane. And it's very beautiful. And I thought, the airplane is certainly one of humankind's better inventions.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think the car is one of humankind's better inventions. We have a lot going for us,
Yeah.
you know, and some are not.
Yeah.
Most people are nice,
Right.
and some are not.
Mm-hmm.
Most spirits are nice, and some are not. So I don't want to give people out there the impression that you have to be afraid of spirits.
Right.
I would say, no, do not be afraid of spirits. That's what they want. It makes them strong and you weak. Don't be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Protect yourselves. That's one of the things that I do is teach easy protection methods for people to protect themselves from not only spirits, but also living people, you know, from other people who are generating energy in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Really big on that. Also at home and the different places we go, the restaurants and the stores. We need to protect ourselves and develop strong energy shields. And that is a great part of my work. It's not just clearing homes and people, you know, and dealing with negative spirits, but just doing clearings on people and emotional energy from their systems, which I do by distance through Skype. Mm-hmm. And also through pictures and telephone. It's all a matter of focus. There's no such thing as distance. I've been doing this for 28 years. And I was born with psychic ability and really developed my techniques throughout my life. And I learned, I had to learn because I started getting hundreds of phone calls from people as far away as China from the United States. Mm. And so I wanted to help people. How do I help people? And I realized that when I was doing in-person work that I really wasn't touching anybody or anything anyways when I was going through people's businesses or people's homes. Mm-hmm. And so it's really the same thing, you know, with taking a picture, talking to somebody on the telephone, using that picture, talking with them on Skype, getting a good view of their home or their person, mm-hmm. and clearing out the home and the structure of the home of negative emotional energy from past occupants. You never know what they've left in your home.
Right.
All the arguments, anger. Yeah. You might have cleaned the carpets. You might have, you know, spent who knows how much on remodeling. Yeah. But there's still negative emotional energy left in the home, mm-hmm. from past occupants, and also present things that are going on as well. And the same is true of our personal body's energy fields. We generate emotional energy. And we also pick up emotional energy from other people, relationships, places we visit, and something that also should be said that businesses, which I don't really get a chance to talk about enough because of the demonic spirit thing, sure. Businesses are one of the things that get hit the most. If not only can there be a lot of negative emotional energy from failed business in the past, but also from a lot of workers, dropping emotional energy and their feelings in the sure. work environment.
Right. Good point.
And also, it's a great target for negative spirits because if you can destroy a business by attacking people and making them feel uncomfortable and angry and getting them to argue and getting people to make wrong decisions, management making wrong decisions, owners making wrong decisions, difficulties between people. If you can take out an entire business, you might be able to take out 300 people and their families, essentially no work, no jobs, no food. Mm-hmm. That leads to them having arguments, possible divorces, you know, people being hungry. Businesses are a huge target and they're really underrated in the metaphysical field as far as a target. And so I get a lot of calls from businesses, and it's just not something that I get a chance to talk about a lot. Mm-hmm. But I do get a lot of calls from businesses, people who are looking for help. And I have a track record. If you clear out negative emotional energy, you're going to make more money. Yeah. People are going to feel better in your business. People who work for you are going to feel better. They're going to work better. The productivity is going to be better. And you're going to make more money. And I have a track record of doing that. And so businesses are very important. And, you know, they hire people and keep people working, keep people's lives going. And they're very important. And they're a great target, like I said, of negative spirits.
Wow. And
I hope that wasn't too long of an answer.
No, that was really great. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think that we forget about the idea that, first of all, we of course we think now is such a hard time. Now is so hard, but and I think it's just really refreshing when you go, we had problems back then. We had problems back then at this time and at this time, and we got through them. And that really is a message of hope. And I think that we forget about that. We forget to learn from our history, and we get so isolated in our now that we forget to look back and see how we did it before. We will get through it. I'm sure you're right. I believe in the human spirit very much myself, and I know that we have, of course, we are very passionate beings, but we also have a lot of compassion, and a lot of time that is where that anger and vitriol comes from, because of our compassion, and we feel somehow that it's been attacked, or all anger comes from some kind of pain, in my opinion. So when we look at the fact that we are capable of overcoming, and that we've done it before, I think that's very great, and it's a great reminder for all of us that now is bad. I mean, it's concerning, but I think it's been worse. And thank you for bringing that back to the front, because I think that's a great lesson for all of us.
It's how we're handling it, Brent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the problems are necessarily worse. Ecologically, we got some really bad things going on.
Sure.
But we've had problems before.
Yeah.
And what's really going on is how we're dealing with it. We have this new technology, which I have. And as I mentioned before, I'm a technology buff. I have more things going on in my home than you could possibly imagine.
Okay, hold that thought.
And
Jeffrey.
so I'm not against technology, but what I'm all for it. But what I'm saying is that everybody's living room is connected with everybody's living room now.
Yeah.
Everybody's smartphone in their pocket is now connected with everybody's smartphone in their pocket. And so
okay, we're going to go to our first break. Yeah, we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back for more of this discussion. We're on a great entry, so we'll be right back in just a couple minutes.
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon by Chris.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the second half hour of our show tonight. As you can tell, we have definitely hit the ground running here on the portal. Just a, a great discussion. I get lost in the discussion myself, and that break just kind of hammered us. But so I do apologize, Jeffrey. And ladies and gentlemen, welcoming back to the show, Mr. Jeffrey Seelman, who is joining us tonight. And are you hearing me okay?
I hear you fine, Brent.
All
Thank
right.
you for having me back.
Perfect. I have a question from the chat, and this is the question, and it's from a listener on the YouTube chat, Raven Carrier, and she's saying, Jeffrey, among your opinion, I see mirrors around me, above me, home, cart, etc. It's oh, okay, hold on. Let me see if I can find the actual message. It was okay, here it is. I envision mirrors around me, above me and below me, facing away from me, home, car, etc., and saying all negative energy is to go back to where it came from, no more, no less. Is that a good practice? Does that make sense to you?
Raven, yes, that is correct. I think you're doing that very well. Just make sure that you make those mirrors very, very strong. But that is the correct technique and a very effective one. And so you are doing that right. Just like I said, make sure that you make those mirrors very strong and keep a check on them on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then that is, and it seems to me that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jeffrey, but whatever you envision just has to be something that makes sense to you and that you can get behind, because it's your energy that actually creates that barrier. It's not necessarily what you're envisioning. It's just that it's powerful for you. Is that correct?
No. On the other side, there is a natural energy that is non-physical. You can liken it to oxygen, even though that it would not relate. Oxygen is simply what we breathe as a gas. But the idea is there's a natural energy that exists everywhere in the non-physical universe that can be manipulated and used to create non-physical anything. That is how spirits create what they wear. It's not made of cloth. Spirits do not wear clothing. They actually generate what looks like clothing. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned last time, we discussed why spirits wear clothing if they don't have sexual organs. Spirits do not have physical bodies because they like to look good. We don't lose our sense of vanity and our sense of ego when we die, and we like to look good. Right. So why not put on a nice dress? Why not generate a nice dress? And so that energy is everywhere on the other side. And spirits use that for everything, including, it's kind of like just raw energy. And they use it to create things and the different homes that they live in. Do spirits need shelter? No. But they still create homes because they like privacy. And we all like the concept of having our own space. And the space on the other side is quite infinite. There is no distance, there's no measurement of physical, have, an unlimited space to work in. Now we take that we take that energy from the other side, and that's what we use to create the different kinds of shields that I teach people how to create. Mm-hmm. And that is also the energy that I use to clear individuals. I clear adults, families, children, pets, every kind of animal you can imagine I have cleared successfully. And so I use that energy, not my energy, but that energy to actually clear an entire home, the structure of a home, essentially from where I'm sitting right here. I am really sitting, not in any special place. This is pretty much where I work. Mm-hmm. And so I do most of my work. And so I'll take Skype or a picture, and talk to the individual and find out what's going on, maybe more than once, maybe more than twice, whatever it takes to get the job done. And then run this energy from the other side through the property, the structure of the property, because it's very important to clear the structure of the property as well as the atmosphere. Negative emotional energy just doesn't hang out in the air. It actually can permeate into the structure of our living environments, our walls, essentially, our floors, our ceilings, our attics, our basement. It has a tendency to drop and gravitate towards the earth, much like gravity, the laws of gravity. But it needs a push very often because we tend to control our environment like we control ourselves, meaning that we see our space as something that belongs to us. And in doing so, to a certain extent, we help hold in some of these energies. If we were doing some more, clearing techniques, which is something I teach people how to do, besides me doing it, I teach people how to clear their homes so that they can continue to do these things. The idea is to essentially release forcibly negative emotional energy into the earth and away from the property, and then sever the connection between the property and that negative energy. None of this is religious, and none of this I would consider to be metaphysical. I really believe that this is science. Mm-hmm. It's something that I have changed my mind on a little bit. Rolled by. I, would use different terminology when I first started out. Not religion so much, but the idea that, this is metaphysical and, above natural, meaning supernatural. But I've come to believe that this is not supernatural, that all these things that are happening are science. Mm-hmm. I believe in physical science, and that is one of the reasons that, in 28 years, I've really never had many arguments with scientists because I believe in physical science. I think they're right. Mm-hmm. My job is to deal with non-physical energy, non-physical science. So physical scientists deal with physical issues and how that works, and I deal with non-physical energy and non-physical environments, non-physical beings, and how all of that works. Mm-hmm. These points intersect. The non-physical and the physical intersect very nicely. Scientists are kind of looking at this concept of the string theory right now, that depending on how the strings vibrate, that depends on what it creates. Depending on how it vibrates, it creates physical reality. And they're working on that right now, and I would say they're quite correct that this is where we're at right now, that, what is creating physical reality? What is sustaining and creating physical reality is the non-physical side of everything. Some people call it heaven. Some people call it the other side. There's many names for it, but essentially it's just another level. Mm-hmm. And you can call it what you want. And I'm not trying to say that everything spirituality does not exist. I personally believe in God. I think that there is a creation force operating on a non-physical level that eventually works its way up into the physical system, and that all of that is science. So the idea that who's ever creating these things, and one thing, one being, mm-hmm. intelligent being, or many, I think it's, both.
Sure.
That is essentially are scientists and bakers as well. They're baking a cake. They don't know how it's all going to turn out. I really don't think that things are preordained. I think that they have an idea of how things are going to happen, and we have sort of like signposts, things that we want to accomplish in our lives, that we're meant to accomplish, and this goes into the concept of how time operates. So in psychic readers, which I am not a psychic reader. I am psychic, but I'm not a psychic reader, and there are much better psychic readers out there than me, can help explain that maybe in a better way, exactly how time works and how they're able to perceive some things that that happen in the future, and some things that are happening outside of our realm of our vision. And so all of this can be explained. And I like to explain it because it needs to be explained, because it is science, and science should be explained. And so non-physical science has just as many rules as physical science. And this is how I work, and this is the principle of my business. All I'm trying to affect is non-physical energies. That is in a person's home, in a person's energy fields of their body, in their business, is all non-physical. Spirits are also non-physical. Our emotional systems are non-physical. Our psychological systems are non-physical. All of these things apply and have rules, and meaning that you can affect these things by applying other non-physical energies to them. So it's not an impossible task in order to carry out a clearing. It's not an impossible task to clear a home or a person, because I'm simply drawing up non-physical energies from the non-physical universe, which is the same thing that spirits do, and using that to affect other non-physical energies. So it's really not as hard to do as it seems. It's not impossible. I shouldn't say it's not hard, because it is, but it's not impossible to do. And it's something that I do train some people how to do. I'm not going to be here forever, and I try to get as much information out as possible, but certainly that I want people to carry on the work, after I'm gone. And so I do teach people how, if they're qualified, or I feel they're qualified and have some background, how to clear other people's homes and other people's energy fields. One thing that maybe the average person can learn is how to clear their own home and how to clear their own body's energy field to a certain extent. It's good to have it done professionally by somebody like me, but you want to maintain that of your home, just like you want, maybe when you move into a new place, you want to have the carpet vacuumed. Cleaned. And then after that, you maybe spray some things on and then vacuum it and just keep it clean. So it's not a bad idea to have a professional clear the home or the business or the person once or twice or whatever. Or, I have clients who come back every 6 months, and it all depends, not because there are problems, just they have hard jobs. And they come in contact with a lot of negative people, and so they need that. And so, but it's possible for people to learn how to clear themselves to a certain extent, keep themselves clear, and maintain the clarity of their living environment and also their business. And I really think it's something that's mandatory, because if you're living in somebody else's energy fields, the people who lived in your home before you, or the people who moved out, or whatever, there's so many different scenarios here. You can be affected by that very easily on an emotional level, and that can affect everything else in your life. Why put up with it? Why not just have it cleared?
Very good.
And so, not to toot my own horn so much in my business, but one of the things that people ask me, especially the media, is that why I charge so little for my services compared to other psychics. And the reason is that a long time, I remember doing this in past lives. I was born with psychic ability. I was born with the ability to see spirits, and also to perceive to perceive emotional energy generally. I was very sensitive to it when I was growing up, and it was very difficult on me. And so, I think that people need to understand that the concept of doing this kind of thing is something that really anybody can do with some training. Mm-hmm. And that training is not real hard. The reason that I charge so little for my services, as I mentioned before, was
Uh-oh. Did we lose you? Are you there, Jeffrey? Uh-oh. We might have lost him. Let me see. Let me check my signal. Looks like we're good here. I think we might have just lost Jeffrey, but let me see if I can get him back. This is not where we want to leave it. Shucks. Okay. All right, hold on. Let me go down to one cam as I try to sort out our connection here, ladies and gentlemen. It does look like we've lost him, so I'm not sure what exactly happened here, but we'll get it sorted because that's what we do here on the portal. We roll with it. And unfortunately, the portal keeps giving us plenty to roll with. Let me just see. Yeah, he just dropped now, so let me get him back on the horn and see if we can reconnect with him. All right, so it is ringing as far as I know. There always seems to be some energies at work. I even burned in the incense tonight, the frankincense, just to make sure it was clear, but no sign of him yet. And ladies and gentlemen, the phone lines are open, just so you know. Feel free to call in if you have a question for Jeffrey. I'm sure we'll get back with him sometime in the near future here, but hopefully there he is. Welcome back, sir.
You got me back?
We got you back. Welcome back.
All right. So I was saying that essentially the reason I charge so small amount of money is because I want to help everybody. Mm-hmm. It's a decision that I made a long time ago. I was talking about that I remember bits and pieces of different past lives and doing this kind of work in past lives. And that is how I know some of the things that I know. And there's a lot of other ways that I have acquired this knowledge. And so I decided that I wanted to be available to everybody, to make my services available to people who don't have, and that is most of the world. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to, I don't ask my clients how much money that they make anyway. And so I don't charge a sliding scale fee. The media asks me that quite often. As I was saying, I don't know if you picked that up or not, but it's a question I get very often from the media. Why do you charge so little when you do something so important? That, as I said, that reason is that so I can reach everybody, because the kind of problems I'm talking about exist everywhere. At the very least, I do a lot of pro bono work as well, and I help people. I have audio lessons and video lessons and text lessons I can send people, because just about everybody's got the internet today, which is really great. Yeah. And so at least we can do that. And I do whatever I people. To do the kind of work that I do has to be somewhat of a calling. It's not something I recommend. You can see I wrote something about that on my website. And I write quite a bit on Facebook as well, and LinkedIn, and you can find those links to all of that on my website, starclear.com. But I do write a lot about how our world is going through changes and how we need people out there really, really helping individuals. There are a lot of spirits out there, what we call spirit guides, helping people in a lot of different ways. Your spirit guides are going to come, and we all have spirit guides, and they're going to come in our dream state or in our waking state and give us good good business ideas, or let us know that they're there by essentially generating some warm and fuzzy energy. And then they're going to leave. They're not going to live in our home. And we talked a little bit about this last time. I'll just go into this briefly.
Sure.
I really don't think it's a good idea to let spirits live in your home.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people would disagree with me on this, but it's something I strongly suggest. Your spirit guides don't live in your home. They respect your privacy, and they're not going to invade your space.
Mm-hmm.
If they come down, they're going to give you some good information, and they're going to leave. And it's the negative spirit guides, or the negative spirits, we need to watch out. They're the ones that might come in and try to affect the people in your home, the people in your living environment, in your business, whatever, and then stay. And I mentioned this last time as well. I'll just briefly say it. This concept that I've heard, for the last 3 decades almost, about, hey, I have this little old lady who lives in my house and she bakes cookies and all that, nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Why is a spirit baking cookies in your kitchen, and they're clearly not for you? So, the more, I should say, at the very least, you have a spirit that may be well-intentioned, but also very mixed up and lost, and has no business in your kitchen for any great length of time, and it's not necessary. So I put forth to people a zero tolerance policy for having spirits live in your home. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it should be tolerated, and you should not tolerate it. And there are things you can do about it that are very simple in order to stop that from happening, because they do like to enter into people's homes. The negative ones, we're talking about negative spirits here. It's my work. Nobody really calls me, besides to call me to say, hey, Jeffrey, thanks a lot for, clearing my home. It feels a lot better, or my business, or my body's energy fields. People don't really call me unless there's a problem. Mm-hmm. I expect that, and so we are talking about negative spirits during this radio. And that's why we're not talking so much about positive spirits at the moment. I don't mean to be so negative, because I'm not a negative person.
Sure.
At all. But my job is to get rid of negativity in people's homes and their body's energy fields. And so that's why we're focusing on that. Mm-hmm. We don't need spirits living in our home. We don't need spirits involved in our lives that are negative, that we don't know who they are. Mm-hmm. This also goes into devices like the Ouija board, pendulum, any kind of divination devices. I'm not saying don't use them. I've certainly used them myself on occasion, especially back when I was doing lots of experiments in the 1990s and all that. They work, mm-hmm. but they're hard to control. And you don't know exactly who you're talking to. Right. So one moment it's one spirit, and the next moment it's another spirit.
Sure.
So I really can't recommend it. I really recommend the frontal communication technique when dealing with spirits. We can learn to talk and listen and hear our spirit guides without using devices of divination.
Okay.
Although, like I said, properly used, that they can be of great advantage and service. And so I want to add that in there so people don't get mad at me in the chat room and out there and say, wait a minute, the pendulum works great for me, and so does the Ouija board and all of that. That's fine. Just be careful.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree, and that's certainly something that we've covered on the show as well. It's a blind channel. You don't know exactly what you're connecting to or who you're connecting to. You may have every intention of talking to Grandpa, but you could be talking to, something else, a lot else.
Well, it's happened to me. I've done hundreds of Ouija boards, especially back in the 90s. I belonged to a group that was doing that at least once a week and very successfully. They've been doing that for almost 20 years when I had walked in the door. And before long, I was actually operating the planchette, which is the device that goes around the Ouija board. And so it does work. Yeah. And one of the things that I learned is that you can have 5 or 6 or 10 different spirits pop in 5 minutes.
Right.
It's not just a matter of 1 or 2 or, something has changed.
Right.
It's kind of like a party line, like the old telephone system. You just don't know. Anybody can pick up a line and simply, we don't know who we're talking to. In order to move the planchette.
All right, we got to go for our hour break. So we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go away for more of the Portal.
Play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, dripping scars across just make sure that you're well fed.
never sensed anything like it. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. They're attracted to the one thing about her that is different from themselves. Her life force. It is very strong. It gives off its own illumination. It is a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures. Something they desperately desire, but can't have anymore. Right now, she's the closest thing to that.
Poltergeists are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are of fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
And they can go for years and years and years and years, and generations even. But welcome back to the Paranormal Portal, and again, I'm really not this much of a rookie. I sometimes will blow a break and will run headfirst into one of those, but so far it's happened twice tonight. It has everything to do with the discussion. I'm absolutely just compelled, and I just love listening to Jeffrey speak. So it's kind of my fault. So I do want to apologize, because I usually know what I'm doing a little better than this, but then again, you know, it's just one of those shows. So, again, we have our special guest tonight, Mr. Jeffrey Seelman, who is a spiritual teacher. He is an educator. He teaches classes on spiritual development and protection. He is an exorcist, an author, and an all-around wonderful person. So, as you can see, it's a great pleasure to have him on the show. But welcome back, Jeffrey, and I'm sorry, brother. I didn't mean to keep running us into head first like that. My apologies.
Oh, that's quite all right. At least we're connected, and just a great show. A lot of good topics tonight. And so, and we have also quite a snowstorm happening below us. I think Chicago's being hit. I'm not sure, but that's what I read tonight. And that's just 90 miles due south of where I'm at right now. I'm just about 200 feet from the bluffs of Lake Michigan.
Wow.
And so I'm just 90 miles south is the great city of Chicago. Uh-huh. And so there, I think there's a big snowstorm moving through the Midwest, and so trouble from that too. And certainly, I think, when the wind is right, meaning that there's a lot of emotional energy in the atmosphere, it thickens the atmosphere kind of like a thickener in soup. Mm-hmm. And it's easier to transmit emotional energy that way, Brent. Mm. And that is how demonic spirits or very powerful spirits actually manipulate, to the degree that they can, to the extent that they can, physical reality, and also harm people. And it's not to a great degree, as you know. There are not cars turning over in the streets. You know, it's not something out of Ghostbusters or anything like that.
Right.
But like I said, when the wind is right, meaning there's a lot of emotional energy in the atmosphere, in the environment, and it's thick like that, it's easy to transmit emotional energy. All I wanted to mention, just to tie it up before the break, was when a person operates the planchette, or two people, it's supposed to be two people, if everybody's listening out there, that essentially the spirit will actually touch the energy field of the one or two people that are operating the planchette, which is, like I said, the device that goes across the board. That actually pushes the planchette to what that particular spirit is trying to send a message and write out. That is how that works.
Okay.
Pretty much the same thing with divining rods. My mother actually was very psychic, although she kind of grew up in a time when that was not accepted, but she'd probably be part of my business if she was alive today. You know, she was very, very psychic and taught me how to dowse for water when I was 16 years old. We were from the North, but she moved to Arkansas after my parents got divorced. And one of the things that she taught me was to dowse for water, and I really got good at it. I was really able to tell. She had actually had, you know, the property surveyed, so she knew where everything was and how deep it was and ran. And I was actually able to tell how deep the water was, where the underground river or stream started and where it ended as far as depth goes. And so I have to thank her for that. And so the planchette is operated by spirits, usually. I think it's possible sometimes that are, you know, subconscious work. But if you feel the planchette moving across the board and you're certain that it's not you or your partner operating, doing this, that it is moving, it does work, and it is a valid communication device. And there are lots of different kinds of methods of divination that are quite valid.
That is cool. We did have another question from the chat, and it's actually from Don, who is usually my co-host. He comes in on Saturdays and Wednesdays. But he was asking, what do you think of, well, he asked two questions, and I saw both of them, so I'll ask him. But he said, first of all, what is going on with those spirits that are, quote unquote, stuck in their death state? And I'm sure you must be familiar with it, but there's allegedly spirits can be stuck in how they died and just be repeating that over and over and over and over. And what's going on there?
Oh, absolutely, Don. You're quite correct. This happens. This is actually very common. This is one of the problems that I work with. People have great expectations for what's going to happen to them when they die. Some people have no expectations. A lot of people expect nothing to happen, or they wish nothing would happen, meaning that they would wink out and that's the end of it.
Sure.
But it's not. And so what happens is that when people die, they really don't change at all. There's the concept, that somehow that everything changes and all sins are forgiven, everything's wiped out, the slate's clean, all of that nonsense. When you die, nothing happens. You simply drop your physical body. And what happens, what Don is referring to, is the problem that people get stuck in a frame of mind.
Okay.
They don't expect what they see when they die. They have great expectations of something else happening. Should I go lay in my grave? Is somebody going to come and get me? Which does happen sometimes. And when these things don't happen, and also when the mind has been affected by physical disease, which does end at death, and also, or a person has had really strong views and feelings or has been really ill, they don't necessarily heal mentally immediately. The physical symptoms will be gone. They leave with the physical body. But the mental issues, they can hang around for a while.
Okay.
And so that is one of the problems, and that can lead to the concept of, and something that does happen, which is that people go through this cycle. If you die and you think about, say, your sister or your mother or your daughter or something, you go there. Where you think is where you go. This is how spirits operate, propel themselves. And this can lead to a cycle even, of perpetual motion. Most often what happens is people get lost. They simply don't know what to do, and they end up hanging around the physical realm or as close to it as they can get. They can't be a part of it, but they can surely stand next to us and kind of wonder what to do next. And they, don't remember what to do. Eventually it will come back to them, but we have a lot. We all, I guess, have our own stubborn thinking and have our own concepts and like to hang on to our concepts. And we die, we have these concepts of what's going to happen to us. And when they don't happen, maybe exactly how we think they're supposed to happen, how we're taught they're supposed to happen, people get angry.
Mm-hmm.
People get angry. They lash out. They lash out at themselves. They become confused. And this is also how we end up with a lot of negative spirits running around causing problems in people's homes, businesses, offices, and places of power in our world. Mm-hmm. And so it's not always just real powerful spirits necessarily. Sometimes it's just people who are lost and they don't know what's going on. They might think they are sleeping and dreaming, and they're confused. Sleeping is very much like being a spirit, except for we're tied to the physical body. But we essentially do leave our conscious level and go out on these great adventures. So I do tell people that dreams are real. It's not something that just happens in your head. You actually go out and go on these great adventures every night. But, your consciousness leaves your body. Your spirit leaves your body. Most of it, not all of it, but most of it. The problem is that, so many people say, why do I act like that? I would not do that if I was a spirit. I did some stuff last night in my dreams I would not do. And I would say, that's correct. Because you were not fully a spirit. You were sleeping. Part of you was still connected with your physical body, and part of you was still lying on that table. I'm sorry.
In the bed.
Hopefully on that bed. Yes, on the table with a toe tag, but on the bed. And part of you is you're connected with that part of you, so you're not fully conscious. You do things the way that you would normally react if you were fully a spirit or even fully a human, to answer Don's question fully. And so I want to get to Don's second question.
Well, the second question and we've covered this on the show, and we cover a lot of ghost encounters. And one encounter, the one thing that seems to come up quite often is that spirits can absolutely manifest themselves so they're indistinguishable from the living. In other words, people have these discussions with spirits. In fact, one of our listeners, Diana, sat down and had a conversation with a friend of the family who, after he disappeared, she remembered that he was in the hospital in a coma. And he came and sat down and had a whole discussion with her. And so it also what has come up is that sometimes, very rarely, but we came across one story where this person came over to visit a loved one. Love you. I can't stay long. I got to go. And left after giving a hug. And some part of her shirt got caught on the chair and tore a piece, which remained behind. And then she disappeared. And then she got the phone call that the person that just visited had already died. And she was like, no, wait, that's not possible. The person was right here. So what is going on in those situations?
My guess, my professional guess would be that she is seeing a spirit so clearly that it resembles a physical human being.
Okay. So it's more a
matter. That is what I think is going on. So she probably has a fair amount of psychic ability, and whether she knows it or not, and that she saw a spirit, because the only difference between a spirit and is that spirits do not have a physical body. Right. Other than that, they are completely capable of holding a normal conversation.
Oh, okay.
And so the idea that somebody coming and visiting somebody that they know before they leave and go to live with other spirits, which is what we normally do, is very believable. But the question is did she, physically manifest in that room? I was not there.
Yeah. Okay.
So I can't say for sure, but, with dealing with these kinds of cases and dealing with these things in my own life and having so many conversations not only with spirits, but with aliens, which I talk about in my first book, and no secret.
Sure.
That my guess would be that she was talking with a spirit that she saw so clearly that it was not luminescent. She did not see through it. It simply looked very physical to her. She may disagree with that, but that's just what I could take away from that information.
Okay. And another question just came in from the TFR chat, and this one is from Kirkby007, says, ask Jeffrey if spirit can take advantage of your energy fields, especially when run down or have an illness, etc., and if so, what's the best way to guard against them?
It's a good question, Rick. And it's Rick that I know is a good friend of mine from England. And I want to say hi. Hello, Rick, out there. Thank you for the excellent question. You know, it's very important to protect ourselves from emotional energy. And all we really have to do is learn how to strengthen our energy fields and create different barriers so that negative emotional energy, which is free flowing and also sent by people thinking about us, people who are thinking about us also send us emotional energy. Just by thinking about us. They can do it when they're sleeping. It's not necessarily something that's deliberate. And so people who are thinking about us are sending us emotional energy. Environments that we come into contact with, you know, whether it be a store or a restaurant, a pub, whatever, that we pick up emotional energy. There's free-flowing emotional energy in there, and we can pick that up as well. So I developed a multi-layered protection system that works. I have my little kitty here who's scratching, and that's what you hear.
Aww.
She has something to say for the cats out there. But a protection system, and that is something that I teach. Raven, who had called in or been in the chat room, had a pretty good take on how to go about some of this. I also advocate creating also larger mirrors as well, meaning mirrors that surround ourselves. It is one of the 5 layers of protection that I teach. I teach a multi-layered protection system to ensure that negative or the least amount of negative emotional energy enters into our system. And so we need more than just a few mirrors, and not to, you know, cut down Raven's technique because it works for her and that's all that counts.
Right.
But what I teach is simply a multi-layered protection system, that something that we can bring up in, 10 seconds flat. One of the things, when I got out of the Air Force, things that I studied was the protection systems that were being taught back in the 1960s and 70s. And I found them to be inadequate. Well-meaning, but inadequate. You can take 10 minutes in the morning and, imagine some bubble around yourself or whatever. That's bound to fade throughout the day. Plus, one of the other problems that I ran into looking at how society in the 21st century is operating is that nobody has 10 minutes anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Not in the morning, not at night. I don't, you don't, nobody does. And so I developed a technique that can be brought up in 10 seconds in your car, in the parking lot, in the work environment, in the home environment, any place you happen to be, in a restaurant. Essentially, it puts up a barrier, a multi-layered barrier that stops it in its tracks. And one of the things it does, which Rave had mentioned as well, is that it sends energy back to its source, which is very important. That's not an attack. You're not attacking somebody. They don't know they're sending energy necessarily. But what happens is that when they send energy to you and you create a system to send the energy back to the source, it meets it halfway and essentially breaks the connection. It's like 2 laser beams meeting in a center and simply canceling each other out.
Okay.
That probably is not the best example, but you'll get the point. I hope everybody out there will do that. And so I think it's important to have a multi-layered protection system that you can bring up immediately. From the time you get out of your car until you go into that large shopping center to pick up all the things you need, because as you know, some of the places we are not as friendly as they used to be. I'm not talking about the staff, I'm talking about the prices. They've gone up considerably since, I was growing up. Yeah. And it's not so much fun anymore to go shopping. Sure. And so everybody's worried about, naturally about, the rising cost of things, and so it's more like business now. Yeah. And so there's a lot of emotional energy in your average store, in your average restaurant. People are worried about things, and we talked about this in the beginning of the show. They're worried, and they should be. There's a lot to worry about. Sure. But we need to protect ourselves, and Rick makes a great point. We really need to, develop and learn the proper techniques to protect ourselves from negative emotional energy, which is in every single building that we go into. There is no building that does not contain some amount of emotional energy. Emotional energy is not something we need worry about. How do we know the difference? It's very much like this. I'm not sure if this is the greatest example, but I'll use this one. If I would touch someone on their forearm with my finger like this, it would feel good. They'd say, that feels nice, Jeffrey. Okay, so that's positive. Imagine that or visualize that being positive energy. Now I take a pin and I prick you. I don't draw any blood, but I, cause just a little tiny bit of pain. That doesn't feel good. We know that that's negative. You don't want me to do that. Jeffrey, please stop. Don't poke me with the pin. At least I hope you say that. and so I saw an opportunity for a joke there. So, we know what is good for our body and what is not good for our body. This is not an absolute and true in every case. But it's true with the average person. We know it feels good and is good for us. So we know when somebody's sending us good, positive love energy, when our spirits are sending us information and trying to communicate with us, like what happened with Don, the example Don was giving in his second question, what happened to this woman, saying, hey, I'm okay. We inherently know what is good for us and what is not good for us. And so we don't really need to watch out for positive energy. What I'm developing is not what I teach people is not a cocoon that keeps out all energy. It's more of a system that filters out negative emotional energy and sends it back to its source.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it works, and I really haven't had anybody who said that it doesn't. And I've taught the technique, a couple of thousand times. And, and also it is part of my first book. My first book, I decided, even though I was approached by a number of different publishing companies, I really turned them down because they wanted to make the book about me and my very unusual life. But I didn't want to do that. I felt that was very egotistical of me to allow that to happen. And so the first chapter is about me and my metaphysical history. Everything you wanted to know about Jeffrey Seelman and his metaphysical history is in chapter 1. But chapter 2, 3, and 4 are about how to protect yourself. And if you care to learn, and not through me, but through audio lessons, which you would get anyway, whether I teach you or not. Anybody who takes any of my services automatically gets a link to all of my stuff. And one of the things that I offer when I do radio shows or television shows, and I've done a lot of them, one of the things that I do like to offer to people who are listening, whether now or in podcasts in the future, is that if you email me, and you can find my email on my website, I'd be happy to send you that link to all of my stuff for free. And so I did not create my first book in Chicago in 2013 in order to make money. I created it to help people, and that's why I turned down some very famous publishing companies that people would probably say was a very dumb idea, but I did not want the book to be, my first book at least, to be about myself.
Very cool.
I felt that, you know, a little bit, yes, but a lot, no.
Right.
I wanted that book to be a book to help people, and that's what it is. It's essentially a workbook, and it's yours if you want it. It's a link. It's on the internet. It's an audiobook. I decided to create an audiobook because I'm a teacher, and I do my best work by mouth.
And we're going to take our last break.
Instead of looking back, you know, at the pages, you know, what did Jeffrey say? Page 7, page 8, page 228. I kind of teach it verbally so that you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about, and you'll learn how to do it correctly, how to protect yourself correctly.
Okay, so we're going to go to our last break, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back in just a couple minutes for the last half hour of the show. We have a call on the board that we'll get to right when we come back, so don't go away, everybody. We'll be right back. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the last half hour of tonight's show. And my God, it's flown by so fast. I know these shows go quickly, but it still just rattles my brain that so much time can go by. And it seems like we've only been talking for about 10 minutes. It's just amazing. But ladies and gentlemen, again, let me reiterate what Jeffrey just said before the break. And is that if you reach out to him, go to starclear.com, which is his website. If you reach out to him via email, he will send you a link to his first book and several resources absolutely free to help you learn ways to protect yourself, ways to, develop the shields that he's mentioned that you can put up in just seconds to keep the negative energies out as much as possible. And there's so much more information on there. And thank you so much, Jeffrey, for doing that. It's so cool. And I can't thank you enough for offering that to our listeners. That is just brilliant.
Well, and no strings attached either. It's good to get the information out. I want you to be able to protect yourself. It's so important to learn how to protect yourself from negative emotional energy that is in the workplace and every place that we go. It affects us on an emotional level. So people angry or we can pick.
Wow. Looks like the connection is having trouble again, ladies and gentlemen, so I do apologize. But as far as I can tell, our connection here is fine. But Jeffrey did mention there's a storm on his end, so it's possible that that inclement weather is affecting his connection as well. So I do apologize. But I'm going to keep an eye on this, and hopefully we haven't lost him, but we have a few calls on the line, and we will get to those as quickly as we can, ladies and gentlemen, as soon as I can get Jeffrey back on here. I'm not sure what is going on tonight, but it's the last time Jeffrey was on, too. There was some really interesting things going on as well, especially with the camera, which is completely wild, but looks like we did drop him, so let me get him back here. Just one moment. Providing he didn't lose his connection completely. But where are you? Where are you? Don't you love? There, it should be cleared now. There he is. Okay, so his connection cleared. Let me add him back again. And then we'll get to these calls that are on the board. So hopefully he'll be able to pick up here. And we'll be back in business. There you are, sir. I see you're back.
Just disconnected myself. I was hearing everything quite clearly.
Okay.
But I decided to disconnect and reconnect with you guys. So
okay. We have.
And so what I was saying was no strings attached there. We need to learn how to protect ourselves. And I have no problem with sending people my link, which has so many lessons on it, not just how to, but also how I feel negative emotional energy is created, how extrasensory perception works, the science of it, and how negative spirits and positive spirits work in our life as well.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And so there's a lot of things on there. It's actually, I've spent 11 years on that particular page. It's always going to be there. You don't have to download everything, but you can if you want. You're welcome to download. The audios are in MP3 form. You're welcome to download whatever you like and upload to whatever you like. None of it's encrypted or encoded in any special way. So I want the information to be out because the least amount of people that are being harassed by negative emotional energy, most of it coming from people and not spirits, right, which is something I don't get a chance to say. And I want to thank Brent and his great show so much for allowing me to say that, because so many radio and television shows that I do concentrate so much on the demonic aspect, which is a very small slice of what's going on on an energetic level. The real problem, the number one problem, is that we don't feel very good about each other.
Right.
and we're sending each other negative emotional energy for some very frivolous reasons. They may not seem frivolous. I know we have legitimate arguments going on throughout the world. We all live on a very small to medium-sized planet that happens to be on the very edge of a very large galaxy, and all we have is each other.
Yeah.
And so we need to learn to live with each other. It's very important that we do that. And so what I do is part of that, you know, getting rid of negative emotional energy in people's lives, in their homes, in their businesses, in their offices, in places of power where people work. Negative spirits do gravitate towards that. But the number one problem, as I mentioned, is how we feel about we're sending each other the most amount of negative energy. The second problem would be people who were once alive that are now essentially deceased. They simply are spirits. There are people without physical bodies, but they are cognitive just like us.
Okay.
They're very aware, and they're the secondary problem. The third problem, the least thing that we need to worry about, but something we do need to consider and is involved very heavily in these problems, are the demonic spirits. Very powerful, very old spirit, which could be said to be the counterpart of angels. They would be the ones to attack people in power. They would be the ones to attack people that it can influence other people and policy. And they offer protection and keep their buildings clear as well, no matter how important they think they are.
Sure. Okay, well, we have 3 calls on the board, and so with about 18 minutes left of the show, so let's see what we can do here. Caller number 1, you're on the air, and it's area code 480.
Hi, Brent and Don. This is Jess. I was just letting you know that I was trying to get you on YouTube, and for some reason it didn't pop up, just to let you know. And I did have a question for Jeff.
Okay, by all means, go ahead.
My question is, does the big blood moon that's coming have any metaphysical effects on people besides emotional and physical? Because Brent has some physical effects. I was just curious. Is there any metaphysical influence on people, celestial-wise?
If I got this correctly, your name is Jess?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
Jess,
you met me before.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that everything affects everything else. And so the moon does affect us on an emotional level, on a psychological level, and on levels that are energetic as well, and on physical levels. And there's a lot of science to back that up. Physical science, non-physical science. So I do think that not only the moon affects us, but also other planets, be they close or be they far away, including other star systems and the stars themselves. So I think everything affects everything else.
And we have like 3 of them back to back, like January, February, and March. And, I was wondering, is it all going to be negative? Is it going to be bad? Or is it, just the feeling,
Well, the moon, as you know, the moon reflects sunlight, and we can use that in a positive way. I think that an astrologer might be better able to answer that question directly, meaning that is there going to be more of emotional distress or movement due to a particular position of the moon? I'm not an expert in that field, and so I don't really want to guess.
I was just saying metaphysically, speaking, are spirits coming in through a portal sometimes, or something like that?
I don't think they need to use a portal. Anyway, I don't think they're very far away. The idea being is that why would spirits want to hang around us when they have each other to hang around? They can't talk to us, besides the little conversations that we have. There's really no reason to do that. I think sometimes the idea of a portal, and I do think these things exist, by the way, they do exist, but the idea that usually these portals are coming from negative places, and this is something of great concern. Some spirits are not able to live and get along with not only physical people, they harass physical people, but they also harass spirits. They need to be put by the proper authorities into essentially realms that are safe, and they're not being tortured or anything like that. And they do get out sometimes and create havoc. And this is what is commonly referred to as hell. But it's not like what people think. Spirits are not being tortured and all, and it's not forever. And none of these things are happening. But some spirits do need to be quarantined because they simply repeatedly attack living human beings and also spirits over and over again, and they will not learn their lessons, and they need to be quarantined. I also take part in some of these procedures, although I personally don't have the authority to determine whether a spirit needs to be quarantined, not by themselves, but in a realm with other spirits. Okay, nobody's stuck in some realm by themselves, but when this happens, what I do is with other more powerful spirits, and they make a determination that a spirit is simply not going to change its ways. And this does happen quite often, and the spirit needs to be quarantined for a little while in order to look at itself. And
get its own perspective on things.
Well, right. If you live around people like yourself and you're a really bad person, eventually you're gonna get sick of it. You're gonna realize, criminals really don't like each other. I mean, sometimes they do in a way, but they don't carry guns always, for robbing innocent people. They carry guns also because they don't trust each other.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's something, important to be said, that negative spirits don't care much either and tend to operate very often on their own. And one of the real tragedies of what's going on in our world today is that they are really having a pretty free reign because we have so much rage already pointed at each other over our differences or seeming differences that all they have to do is give us a push. And push
that's pretty bad.
Yeah, and we're not protecting ourselves. And so when we get angry, that's when a negative spirit would strike and amplify our anger.
Feeding frenzy, like you said last time, feeding frenzy for negative energy.
Get us to do things that we would not normally do. Throw our anger and our rage over the edge.
Right.
This is the goal. It doesn't take a whole group of spirits to do it, just one nasty one.
Well, thank you so much for your call, Jess. It's great to hear from you.
Thank you for your input, and I'm on TFR Live. So
nice talking to you again, Jess.
Talk to you later.
Okay, see you, Jess.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for your input.
All right, and we got another call here. We got two more with about 11 minutes left, so I hope we can get to them both, but we'll try. And this is area code 713. You're on the air.
Hi, this is Nellie.
Hi, Nellie.
I have a question for him. A little bit in the conversation, you had said something about when people pass, they don't have people waiting for them. When my mother was passing and I was sitting on the bed with her, she was home with hospice, she yelled out and said, "Mama," and she reached her hand up and was pointing. Where she was pointing to, I saw her parents and two of her brothers there.
Oh, wow. My
question is twofold. If we don't have people waiting for us, to help cross us over, why was they there? And second one is, why did I see them?
Let me take the first question. I want to clarify something. I did not mean that there is no help when a person dies, that there are not people who are our loved ones come and help us and bring us to where they live. They do. And also our spirit guides. If I misspoke, I apologize. And I may have said, I know that I said something, to that effect. And what I meant is that some people, they don't have anybody waiting for them. It's not a golden rule. Most people do, but some do not. And some of those people end up becoming unfortunate, problematic spirits because they simply they get lost, they don't know where they are, all the things we talked about before. But you bring up a great point, Molly. I just want to clarify that in 80% of the cases, maybe more, of people we all pass on. There is somebody waiting for us. They will help us gravitate towards where spirits live and congregate. So I want to make that clear that Molly is quite correct. What is that second question, Molly, that you had? I didn't quite catch that.
Okay. It's now like the second question is, why did I also see them? Why did I also see them?
When did you see them?
Well, I think she's saying, why did she see them? Yeah.
Why do you see spirits?
Yeah, I saw them at the same time. When my mother reached up her hand and said, Mama, I looked and I seen the same thing that she saw, which was her parents and two of her brothers.
I think we all have some psychic ability.
Why did I see them?
Yeah, and I think we all have some psychic ability, and I think you simply were perceiving spirits, which is completely natural, Nellie. I'm sorry for calling you Molly, Nellie. I didn't hear you correctly. Okay. Nellie, I really think here a bit more psychic percent that you have a little bit more, or at that particular time it really came out and you saw something that the ordinary person would not see, and I think that was quite valid.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was thinking, if they wasn't there to meet her and take her, why was I seeing them also? If she was, I didn't understand that part.
Sure. Well, I wasn't there, but I see what you're saying to me really rings true. That you saw what somebody else saw, which essentially was spirits, and people do see spirits sometimes. Sometimes they only see them once in their life. Sometimes they see them many times. But I think what you're saying sounds completely valid, Nellie.
Absolutely. And thank you for your call,
You saw spirits.
Okay. That's very cool.
I did.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us as well. That's really cool. And have a wonderful night.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good night.
You too. Thank you.
All right, we have one last caller here that we're going to get to. We're going to make it. So this is area code 801. You're on the air.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you great. Thank you.
Okay.
Who are we talking to?
My phone. This is Gentry.
Hi, Gentry. How you doing? Thanks for calling in. We got about.
I'm doing okay.
Good. We got about 6.5 minutes. So if you have a question for Jeffrey, go ahead.
Yep. I was just curious. I got some good answers from Annette and Deb, but I like to hear from others too.
Sure.
If you do want to call on your spirit guide, sometimes I worry that when you do that, you'll be welcoming in other entities as well. I'm just wondering if that does happen if you call on your spirit guide, or will that not open up anything else to come into your home when you do that?
What was your first name again?
Gentry.
Gentry. It's a very good point. It's very important that if you're going to do any kind of spirit communication, which is not a bad idea, I think it's a very
right.
positive. People do that when they go to church and pray. they're essentially communicating, with a spirit. Whether they get something back or not is one thing, but they're certainly putting their thoughts out there to their spirit guides or higher power. It's very important that we protect ourselves from negative emotional energy and negative spirits, because that can happen, and it does happen.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to practice something like a multi-layered protection system, so that if that does happen, when you are contacting your spirit guides, and it's bound to happen, you're bound to get a little bit of interference, that it's not going to affect you.
Would it help to wear like stones that can protect you, that like a citrine stone? Would that help? Stuff to ward off negative energy? Would that help?
Yes. Anything really would help, as long as it has properties that negative spirits don't like, and those are an awful lot of things. Sometimes I'll tell people to play music in a particular room for a while. Negative spirits hate positive music. But yes, stones, absolutely. One of the things that you can do or learn how to do is charge a stone. Essentially what you're talking about is the use of a talisman. And so you're using a stone as a talisman for protection. And these different kinds of stones can actually be charged, meaning that you can actually visualize and put energy into them, or have somebody professionally do it. And so they actually work even better. So absolutely, yes, I would recommend it.
Okay, cool. Okay. Is there anyone else on the line? Actually, we're done. I know the show's over, so I'm good. Thank you for answering my questions. Appreciate it.
All right,
Thank you, Gentry.
Thanks so much for calling in. It's great to hear from you.
You're welcome. Good night.
All right, good night. All right, and that brings us to about the 3-minute mark. Jeffrey, do you have anything that you'd like to close with?
Stop hating each other.
Amen, brother. Oh, man.
We all have differences. We're not supposed to think alike. And I'm not talking about people here in the United States. I'm talking to people in the world. My work, I work with people all over the world. We're all having problems right now. This is not, something that's just happening around here. Stop hating each other. Mm-hmm. We can have differences. It's normal. It's natural. We're not supposed to agree on everything. We can work these issues out. We've done these things before. We can do it again. Don't let the forces that are trying to drive us apart succeed.
No.
That can happen.
Oh, yeah.
This is not set in stone that this is all going to work out. This can fail. So the idea is we're at a very important time in humanity's history. We really need to learn to live together and to accept each other's differences and to make this world a better place in the ways that we see fit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make this as general as possible and not to any particular political or party or school of thought or anything like that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. Start being nice to each other. You don't have to agree with your neighbor. You don't have to agree with people you work with or who are in a different political party, but we can still arrive at conclusions and fix problems that we have and make this all work, because unless we have some kind of giant spaceship I haven't heard about, and I was in the Air Force and worked around a lot of interesting things, and some planet I have not heard about where they have oxygen and nitrogen that we breathe, we're not going anywhere.
Right.
And so there's no place to run. All we have is each other, and we need to learn to live with each other. And the best time to start is now.
Mm-hmm. Amen. That was absolutely beautiful. And thank you so much for being on the show, as always. It's a real incredible pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with you. And it's even more so to hear your wisdom, insights, and knowledge on these subjects, because it's all about teaching and learning and helping people understand and to cope. And the message you're bringing is beautiful. So thank you for doing what you do, brother.
Brent, thank you for doing You know, we talk off air a lot, and you know, you're a great guy and you have a great show, and thank you so much for what you do to help people, because you are helping people and you're doing your part like I'm doing my part and everybody else out there is doing their part. Whatever job you have in this world, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be metaphysical in any way. You know, you're playing your part and you're making this world go round, this beautiful world we live on. We can make this a place worth living.
Amen.
And it's just something we can do, and I know we can do it. We have the strength. We are a very resilient race. Mm-hmm. And I just think the human race is great, and we just have to learn to live with each other. And it's something we're going to have to do, and something we will do.
All right, everybody, that wraps up our show tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Stick around for Nikki Colombo coming up next on TFR iHeart. Tune in and TalkStream Live. I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. And tune in tomorrow night for Miss Robin Moonshadow joining us here on the Portal. Good night, everybody.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Woo!